It's my great pleasure to welcome you all to this webinar tonight on introducing signing and other communication methods and strategies to families of children with deafblindness. I'm Meredith Prain, the Project Manager for Deafblind Information Australia. And I would like to acknowledge, for those of us in Australia, the traditional owners of the various lands that we are all meeting on this evening, and pay respect to their elders past and present, and acknowledge that this land was never ceded, sovereignty of this land was never ceded. I'm really delighted to have two fantastic presenters and people who have been in the field of deafblindness for a long time. So I'm pleased our paths have crossed many times over the years. Firstly, Rob Last, who is a teacher of the deaf and has also worked for many years with children who are blind and deafblind with a specialisation in charge syndrome. Rob's always a really engaging presenter. So yeah, we're really lucky and grateful to have you here this evening, Rob. And also Madelene Rich, who's the parent of a young man with charge syndrome. And Madelene is the president of Charge Syndrome, the Charge Syndrome Association of Australasia. And through her experience as a parent, but also over many years working and connecting with other parents, is also a wealth of knowledge.
Oh, Meredith, thank you. That's a lovely introduction. You say such nice things, so thank you. Yeah, I have been around a while, that's true, and as you can see, but anyway, it's always been a fantastic career to be working with children who are deaf, children who are visually impaired, children who are blind, and children who are deafblind and their families. So I understand there's a group of professionals and parents here tonight, so I hope I can cover for everybody what we're talking about. But which is the communication thing, which is the how to sort of engage in early communication and leading on to more complex communication down the track. So for everybody, we need to know what the kids' vision's like. We need to know what their hearing is like. So there's a lot of individual situations there, because it will depend entirely on how much vision, how much functional vision, and how much functional hearing is there as to what you do. So each kid will be a unique communication entity as to what you come up with and the best way to achieve that. Very rarely have I worked with kids who are totally blind. Mostly there have been some usable vision, and the kids work out very nicely how to use to see what they want to see. And also they then can amazingly use that residual vision well. Just that you have to be responsible to know where the best positioning is, how near, how far, what angle, what spot. And head posture will help you with that too, in the way the kid is going to be looking at you to see you best. So it may not be straight on, it may be at a funny angle. That's the way the kid's seeing. So of course we respect that and follow their lead. So the language today is all about multimodal communication. And that's about using all sorts of strategies and methods to get communication going. I watched a mum yesterday at a coffee shop. We were traveling from Victoria to New South Wales. We stopped at a lunch stop, and there was a mum with a fairly newborn, maybe 8-9 months old, and she was about to feed the baby. And I don't think the kid was deaf or anything, but all she used was facial expression to try and communicate with the child. Really natural process. And her facial expressions were so communicative. She was getting so much feedback from her kid. And it was just a lovely moment. I wish I had asked permission. Can I just video you to capture what you're doing? So it just tells me again how important our facial expressions are in giving information about what's going on. So that's in the very early stages, of course. So we really want to know, are the kids, seeing what we're doing and understanding what we're doing, which might be a big smile or a big whoopee, or it could be, oh, you're not very well today, or whatever the communication is. And we also use gestures, and natural gestures are a wonderful communicator. You can watch somebody across a room and you can kind of get a feel for what they're talking about because of natural gesture. Not necessarily hearing what's going on, but you will be observing what the gist of the conversation and where the location of that kind of information. So in the early stages, it's really about, for me, I think, is with the parents seeking their permission always to go into these two topics. Are you ready to talk about how we do the communication? Is it okay for you to talk about these things? The step before that is actually building a relationship so that you have a equal relationship in conversation about everything that's going on, that you are not the expert. The parent is the expert. You have expertise that you might be bringing to the parent, but the parent is the one who really knows the kid best, and you will have some information and knowledge to bring to the situation. So once with that trust in place and that relationship in place, and then the discussion about communication, it's really good to start by commenting and praising the parent's existing communication, what they're doing already, because it's already happened. It started. It's not like it's going to go whoosh into, complex sign language. It's going to be quite simple and quite clear communication that's going to be going on initially. It might be about being lifted up and little cues that will be given. I'll give you a little cue before we pick up. So you're giving some warning about what's going to happen. We're about to have something to eat, and then let's have something to eat. So cue to tune the kid in, and then the action happens. So the cue and the then thing happening is a really important process, I think, for kids who are deafblind, because so often the startle thing happens because something happens that they have no idea what's going to happen. So it's about making sure you give some chance for the child to understand and them to process what's going on, and then the event happens. So praising the parent, and also perhaps fine-tuning those sorts of issues, like, oh, that was a great cue or great gesture you did. So let's just allow a little time to let that processing happen and then the event to happen. So if it's going to be bath time and it's going to be whatever sign you want to use, might be a towel rubbing, that's your gesture. There is formal signs, but it doesn't have to be the formal one. And then time to happen. So if the kid loves bath time, you'll get the indication that if it's going to be bath time, there will be a bit of excitement going on or a bit of anticipation. And that's exactly what you want. You've communicated beautifully already. So it's not a complex thing. It's not a difficult thing. It's a natural thing. In some cultures, it's not so natural. We're not, if you're Spanish, Italian, me, you do a lot of gesturing and you go on. If you're from other cultures, gesture is not necessarily as natural from that. So it's more encouraging that to happen. So you have to assess from every situation which way to go. The other thing with moving on to more complex communication, which might be using real objects, so that you're going to have a real object or another real object, which might be a bottle, or it might be a cup, or it might be a spoon, so that they would then get that communication, because what you're wanting to encourage is choice. So do you want to drink, or is it time to eat? So which one do you want? So it's presenting this one or this one, and seeing eye gaze or a reach or whatever will happen. So that again, it's getting that that basic communication and giving the child some responsibility about participating in the communication, because so much happens with these kids. It's just happens out of the blue because of their medical conditions, and so the control of their world is not there. And so to try and give some control back to the child so that they are able to participate and get rewarded for any efforts that they may make. So yeah, so that's a real objects. And then I don't know whether I could go through the whole lot. We've talked about facial expression, we've talked about gesture, we've talked about using real objects. And then you probably, hopefully, starting to pair it up with signs that might be meaningful. It's like a cup, a real cup is that, but then without the cup, it becomes drink. So that's the sign. So it's gone from a real object to a more symbolic thing, which is that. The other thing is that we can have object symbols. So instead of the real object, we might just have a toy cup or a small whatever. So that's just a symbolic object again, and certainly letting the kid hold it and play with it and become familiar with whatever it is. So eventually they may have a spoon and a cup, and they'll be putting it to you or towards you to say, yeah, I'm wanting to have I'm hungry, I want something to eat, or I want a drink. So it's, again, try to give control back to the child, remembering that communication is the two-way process. It's not a soliloquy. It's not a lecture. It's you, then me, you, then me. So it's your turn, my turn. So it's back and forth between two people. The other thing I like to do is photos, but with photos, you've got to make sure the kid's vision can do that. So, but photos about the child's life. So it might be a photo of the object, or it might be a photo of mum, or a photo of dad, or a photo of their brother or sister, or the dog, or the house, or very familiar things, but which is in their real world, so that it is a familiar thing. So if there's recognition through a photo, you know that their thinking ability has now progressed on to being able to comprehend what that photo might mean. So very early they won't, but in time, photos become understood. And also, when you're doing book reading, which I hope you're already doing, the book reading will be an indication of what they can see and what is of interest to you. So I also like to use drawings as well, and drawings that can be the cup, spoon. I keep using those examples, or the bath, or the swing outside, or the dog, or a dog, a drawing of mum, a drawing of dad, a drawing of siblings, so that you're building a book of these real people. So you're adding in the real person and adding in the name in writing below it. So we're beginning to introduce literacy, because what we want to achieve is the ability to read, because reading is now such a amazing thing. We've given the texting, giving email, and all the technology available to communicate via that means. So that would be another thing I would use. The other thing I love to use with kids a little later is like cartoons, where there'll be the drawing of the child, and out of the mouth is a balloon, and in the balloon is something that's been said, which might be, I think we'll go out and play on the swing. And then that might be me saying that, and then the child will be going, yeah, good idea. So we can then write that out of the balloon in the mouth. And then you're building up a series of drawings and conversational pieces that can be then used to communicate. The other thing is that I get away with using mime a lot. So if I don't know the whole, Auslan vernacular, I'll mime something. I'll just make it up and do a little bit of a song and dance and perform it to try and get some kind of understanding as well. And I love it when kids start to do that back. They kind of get into the gist of it, like, oh, well, if I do this, maybe I'll be understood as well. You might have to guess what's going on, but a good guess is better than no guess. So, and if it's wrong, the communication will be, oh no, that's not quite right. So again, you've got some communication already happening in a very I don't know, a very simple, not complicated way, and not challenging. It's not like it's a hard thing to do. It's a really natural and comfortable thing to do, and it should be fun, of course, too. The word of the moment is fun. Everything wants to have to be fun, but not everything is. But anyway, we try to make it pleasurable. What we're leading to, of course, is then more understanding of and using more of a formal communication, which would be, in Australia, it would be Auslan. In other countries, it's their sign language. It's not one sign language fits the whole world, unfortunately. It's really sign language per state, per territory, per country. So they're different sign language. So in an attempt to trying to achieve this skill, it's really good to start perhaps going to classes quite early. So once you as a parent feels comfortable with sign language, then it's try and find the sign language classes that are available to you where you are. It might be, it's via the internet. It could be like this, a webinar. It could be via a YouTube clip. It might be on an app. In Australia, we have an app which has, you just type in the word or look for the word and it will show you the sign with the person signing like this. And then it will be the text underneath to show a little sentence. The next one will be a bigger sentence with the keyword there, and then a description of what the background to that sign. So that's a really handy little thing. I don't know whether that's available in all over the lots of countries, but it's certainly available in Australia. And for the professionals, of course, it's a matter of them learning too. If they're new into the game, then yeah, you have to really get stuck into learning sign language or visual language. That's another term I use, visual language, meaning it's not all about hearing, it's about understanding through your vision. But also talking about hearing, we're also pairing that up with trying to get all the hearing stuff sorted out. Hearing aids and BAHA, the bone-anchored hearing aid, cochlear implant, whatever that process of you finding the best amplification, that's another journey that everybody's on. And usually the professionals, the speech pathologists, the teacher of the deaf, will be working together to achieve those outcomes. And we see really different outcomes. For example, Madelene, who you're going to be seeing in a minute and hearing from her, we started off with full signing eventually, or what I'm talking about, eventually to signing. Madelene and family became very fluent in sign language. And now her son is 22 and talks, and he uses oral and spoken language as his primary form of communication. But he's really bilingual. He has Auslan visual language, and he has his spoken language as well. What a great achievement in that. So I kind of aim for that in a way that the kids will have at least maybe two languages. There'll be the visual language as well as the auditory, the spoken language through listening. And it's very achievable. Of course, the kids' ability to process that sort of stuff has to be taken into consideration, and then seeing if we're not challenging too much, that there is a program that works for the individual according to their ability range. So to literacy, I think, again, I talked about starting early with a photo or a picture or a drawing and with the text written underneath. So when you're reading books, there is the text, and so you're signing or speaking or gesturing or acting out what's on the page. So you don't have to be doing exactly what the text is. It can be, the dog is, jumping over, whatever you're doing. So and here's the picture of it. So it's a matter of being very imaginative and very, relaxed about your skills, and don't get too anxious about what what's going on. It's okay. It's all working towards an end point. Resources that you are available to reach some sort of fluency with Auslan. Madeline may be mentioning that anyway, but I'll talk about the fact that you are going to be learning through either going to class or through an app or through YouTube classes or whatever it might be, and then maybe accessing people who are deaf, who are going to be available to you to help learn. One of the things I always liked, and could be one of these clever interpreters we have here today, who is also fluent in Auslan, who will be happy to work with you and teach you. But it's also a trick to use where maybe one night a week as a family, you turn off your voice. And so you have to get all your information through by using visual language, using gesture and mime and signing and drawing or whatever you will work to get you through the evening of preparing dinner and eating and having a conversation and using another form of communication in the house. In preschools, I used to love where there would be a number of tables where the kids would be doing their activities, and one of those tables would be the voice off table. So the kids, when they come to that table, would be then having to get all their messages across without using voice. And that wasn't just for the kid who was there for because of their enrollment in that preschool, because they have certain challenges. They may not be at the table, but they may be. But it's really tuning in the other kids as to another way of communicating as well. And that's really good for the kid who needs the visual communication to see that happening, so that it's not them all by themselves out there struggling through. There's all these other kids doing what they do. So those sorts of creative, imaginative processes are really important as well. I'm going to hand over to Madelene in a minute, but I just hope for the discussion that we have after, there might be some questions where you can get to ask certain things about what will work and what hasn't worked. I'd love to hear what works for you, if that's possible too. So if you don't want to ask a question, but you want to say, what worked for me was ABC, that would be terrific as well, either from the parents or from the professionals, whoever wants to contribute to that. Okay, I might hand over to Madelene now, and she can bring the life experience of a mother who has a kid who's deafblind. I'm going to say one more thing. Don't forget too, for parents, the label deafblind is really a challenging label. I've worked with a family who had a daughter who was blind, where the mum said, I can't use the word, I have to just say she can't see. And I've certainly had parents who've said, my kid doesn't hear too well, my kid doesn't see very well either, but the word deafblind is really difficult to embrace. So remember, that's an issue for parents as well, that they may want to explain how they view that label, that world of deafblindness. It's a tough call. And don't forget too, learning sign language is a tough call as well. Like with everything else that's going on in their lives, oh yeah, sure, we can just learn sign language now, no problem. No, really difficult. And because there could be medical issues, there could be other, and all the other demands of professionals. Oh, we've got to do walking, and we've got to do, physio. And so there's lots going on, and we have to be really sensitive to that as well. Okay, I'll hand over to Madelene now.
Thank you, Rob. Hi, everyone. I'd like to begin it as well by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, and for me, that is the Bunurong people. I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past and present. Thank you to the Deafblind Information Australia, Melanie Robertson and Meredith Prain for inviting Rob and I to participate in DBIA's webinar series. it's very exciting to be able to contribute to this for the Charge community, and to give some insights into how one individual has acquired his communication skills through the total communication method. So this is Sean. He was in hospital 22 years ago, where he spent the first 6 months in NICU, that's the neonatal intensive care unit. He was diagnosed with Charge at 3 months, so halfway through his stint, and we understood then that he would have a vision and hearing impairment. Later, we would learn that he has bilateral collobomas extending to the retina, and he has bilateral hearing loss, moderate to severe in his right ear and severe in his left. His life was out of control the minute he was born. So as you can imagine, those 6 months in NICU were intensive, with massive amounts of medical intervention, 3 bouts of pneumonia, a gastro tube inserted at 3 months of age, which he still has, so he's fully tube fed to this day, and many blood tests taken at any time of the day or night over those 6 months. And sadly, in most cases, he was only aware of the blood test being taken when the needle pricked his skin. So no warning about what was happening to him with medical procedures over those 6 months. So in a unit where most babies are born preemie, and the modus operandi for nursing is to leave them alone so that they can grow, our son needed human interaction and therapy. He needed to move about. And so with a release day nowhere in sight in those first few weeks and months in NICU, we decided to take matters into our own hands and engage services to come to his bedside and to help us to help him. We had a wonderful group of experts in Sean's team, and with the help of a teacher for vision impaired, his toy collection in the hospital grew to bells, strips of foil, shiny necklaces, mobiles, noisy toys, musical boxes, toy frames, and even socks he could wear which had rattles in them. And during the day, we would lay Sean on an exercise mat on the floor between the cots in NICU. No easy feat by any means, as Sean remained connected to oxygen 24 hours a day, a saturation monitor and a feeding tube continuously. But once on the floor, he could move his legs, manipulate the toys with his hands, move his body from side to side and look in a mirror. It was around this time that we met Rob Last, who you just seen, and through him we learned of the importance of a multimodal communication approach for Sean. So what Rob has talked about this evening, we adopted this type of learning with Sean, and he has highlighted some of the issues of learning this language and some of the challenges for the individual with Charge when there's complex health and medical needs. So we learned to use touch cues, as he suggested, such as at bath time, introducing a cloth, letting him know, at nappy changes or for medical procedures. And we encouraged the nurses to touch Sean and tell him when they were going to take bloods before they did the procedure. We used body language, facial expressions and natural gestures, like Brian is doing here, with Sean squeezing his nose. And we introduced Auslan around 3 months of age. Of course, all this was happening along with speech, even though Sean didn't have hearing aids at this time. And with this multimodal communication approach, we had the tools we needed to prepare Sean for what was happening around him. And it gave him the tools to then communicate back to us, even at a young age. So at 6 months of age, we settled into life at home with a baby with complex needs, a 4-year-old with less complex needs, but nonetheless just as important, and us as parents trying to put one foot in front of the other. And over the next 2 years, Sean would be in and out of hospital 8 times with lung infections and asthma. And every week there was at least one appointment with someone, such as a paediatrician, ophthalmologist, dietitian, respiratory, gastro, audiologist, endo, and an ENT. We had regular visits by teacher of the deaf, deaf family worker, physio, OT, speech, respite carers, case manager, early childhood educator, the list goes on. And the therapy Sean needed took up massive amounts of time. So the physio had us rolling him up in a rug or getting him to weight bear or sit on a ball. The OT wanted us to have him play with mud, goop and sand, or thread beads or peel stickers. And the speech therapist wanted us to get him to blow bubbles, taste food and try cued articulation. And of course life went on. Hourly feeds, medications, venting, high temperature, low temperature, clean up vomit, read books, go to the playground, lose sunglasses or hat or hearing aid, gastrostomy falls out, time needs to be spent with the other child, with the husband, spend time with friends, sleep deprivation, and return those overdue library books. So life was very busy, but there was no denying Sean's learning. He was already showing signs of using a visual language and benefiting from it. So we ploughed forward with making communication a priority. And as Rob touched on before, there were just some things that had to be let go of. We couldn't do everything in 24 hours a day when there was so much more to do. And so sadly, we didn't push forward too much with speech therapy because for him, it was just too difficult to attain and it was taking us many, many hours of working with him. And we felt that if we could get him communicating some other way at this time of his life, then there was just so much more benefit for him to have communication, we decided to drop speech therapy and move forward with this multimodal approach to communication. So we learned about drawing using graphic communication and making simple pictures of things we have done to use language building, learning signs and having conversations about things that have happened. So this is around two years of age. So we drew pictures of activities and events together, naming the items and asking questions. So it became a conversation. So like this one about a tractor and hay bales, simple drawings using colours, words, signs and having conversation. And here's another. So getting Sean interested in this wasn't difficult, so long as I found a topic that he liked. And he loves electricity. And during a camping holiday in the bush, we talked about all the camping items we had that needed electricity. And of course, his beloved milk pump was top of the list. But it only would last one day on battery. And we talked about the lantern and how that's run on gas and that can last the whole trip. And the light with the battery only lasts 9 hours. And then our fridge is kept cool using gas. And here are a couple more. So a birthday celebration where he's blowing out a candle on his 5th birthday. And we talk about how many candles are left. And hammering a nail into some wood with the help of his dad. So these books, we have dozens of them. We accumulated many, many over the years. And Sean would spend a lot of time rereading and re-enjoying looking at these activities, reading the books, learning the words, learning the signs, and chatting about the pictures. And it again became a conversation as we remembered the activity together. We threw our family into learning Auslan because we could see that Sean was using signs. We learned sign through one-on-one tuition. I even went to evening classes at TAFE to do levels 1 to 3. We had a sign and dictionary and used online resources. And as a family, we went to deaf social activities such as expos, markets and camps. And Sean's funding program enabled us to employ 2 carers. So we engaged carers who were fluent in Auslan. One of them was deaf and the other was hearing, but fluent in signing. But both of them provided voice-off support in the home. So Sean was none the wiser. He thought that the 2 people in his home supporting him were deaf, and he had no choice but to have to communicate with them using sign. And of course, his skills improved very much over that time, as did ours. So as his skill improved, the carers working with him had to improve what they were teaching him. And because he had such a love of reading at this stage and loved transport, they started to teach him about classifiers. And that just added volumes to what he was learning and the enjoyment that he got from reading, because he was then able to classify what he was seeing. Like in this picture, he's classifying, he's reading about transport, he's classifying about a truck and how it's moving through the story. And it was around this time he became a voracious reader, having a deep love of books. So to complement that, we had a photo taken of an intersection just near our home. So there's a railway crossing, a T intersection, a busy road, and then the carer then put all the words on there about what the items were. So train, road, boom gates, crossing signals. And this was in his book. So this is what he would always look back on. And so during the day, the carer would take him for a walk down to the corner, and they would sit, I don't know for how long, but they would sit for a very long time while he enjoyed classifying the action that was going on in front of him. Boom gates would go up, boom gates would go down, cars would go through, trains would go through, people would stop, people would cross the road, buses would come through. So he really enjoyed doing this and consolidating the learning that he had with classifiers and language, and knowing that the person who was with him was getting as much enjoyment out of it as he was. Another example, just a quick photo, a few words up the stairs, what he's doing, and then we'd add a picture of a sign to complement what was going on in the picture, such as in this example, the sign for careful. And so he would then learn some signs and how to do that. So as Sean's literacy increased, he began to use a computer to send email to people. So one of his carers went to live overseas and became his pen pal, and they exchanged emails and photos for several years. He would go on to learn touch typing in primary school, and today he's a very competent touch typist. He's continued to be supported with Auslan through learning assistance at preschool and then into primary school, where they were fluent in Auslan. The primary school even put on self-funded Auslan course to their curriculum 6 months before Sean started there, and then while he was there. So the students in the school were learning Auslan as well. As mentioned earlier, adopting a multimodal communication system with Sean gave us the tools we needed to let him know what was happening now, or what just happened, or what's going to happen. And having a calendar system was a fantastic tool in his kit. So we introduced a very basic system to start with when he was young, but there was so much going on in his life, such as the appointments, carers coming and going, and holidays, all upheavals that could cause anxiety and stress if he didn't know they were going to happen. So the first type of calendar we used was just a very basic couple of conflict pictures, one of a boy, one of a woman, one of a car, one of a basket, to ultimately say, Mum and Sean are going to go shopping. And the calendar in this picture is again a very basic, but it describes a trip to Adelaide. So this would have been around grade 6, and details the places we were staying and when he would be back at school. And he's progressed now to diaries, a wall calendar, and at the age of 22 he now uses Google Calendar, which he shares with me. It still remains a very important tool in keeping him organised and aware of what is going on. It gives him the opportunity to recheck, have control, and to be settled about what he knows is going to happen. Sean was literate by the time he got to school, and he's able to read 12-point type. He enjoys a wide range of reading material these days, though mostly it's fact, not fiction. So some of his favourite things are Caravan World and a whole range of how to do things, how to fix things, how to make things. So Auslan was pretty much Sean's first language in his 0 to 10 years. I remember when he was about 20 months old and we were at one of his regular ophthalmologist appointments, and the ophthalmologist asked him to read the letters on the chart, and because of Sean's speech and challenges for someone to understand, he spoke and signed it. and I heard the specialist mumble "miracle" under his breath, and he realised what Sean was doing. When Sean was in grade 6, he had a bone-anchored hearing aid, or BAHA, fitted to the left side of his skull, and this improved his hearing quite considerably compared to the digital hearing aids, and it allowed him access to more speech sounds. What came from that was a somewhat clearer speech and a determination in him to want to communicate using speech only. Like in the photo on the right, or with the lady in the red pants, taken at his grade 6 graduation, where he spoke his speech and his learning assistant needed to repeat what he said because his speech was still quite unclear, but he was determined to read that speech out. And the second photo was taken 2 years ago at his 21st, where he gave a speech. We displayed his speech on the overhead projector so that the audience could read what he was saying. Despite his speech being slightly clearer, it is still challenging for people who are unfamiliar to understand what he's saying. When Sean experiences communication breakdowns these days, he knows to use strategies to clear his throat, repeat himself slowly and clearly, saying the last letter of each word. And if that doesn't work, to say it in a different way. Or he can type a message on his phone, or even have the phone read it out, or write it on a piece of paper. And lastly, he'll use gestures to sign, point, or use actions. Now, Sean independently goes to the hairdressers, and at these times he has to take his BAHA off, rendering him pretty much deaf. With the support of his speech pathologist, they taught his hairdresser a couple of useful signs such as hot, cold, finished, done, okay, shave. In regards to communication breakdowns, interestingly, we noticed recently when Sean used Auslan with a deaf person, he did not experience any communication breakdowns at all. I was witness to this happening, and it was remarkable to see him use his signing skills with such confidence and precision and carry on a lengthy conversation with another person using sign language without any communication breakdowns at all. Clearly, he can choose whichever way he wants to communicate with somebody, usually depending on the audience. He doesn't suffer fools lightly and won't often sign with someone who's not fluent, only with deaf people who aren't fully fluent signers. So today, Sean is learning woodwork, where he continues to use his multimodal communication skills, such as having the tutor use a whiteboard to explain the instruction, as you can see in the photo, or the day's activities, or using post-it notes with words written on them to categorise and prioritise his goals. He also uses signs on the workshop floor because he turns his BAHA off when using noisy machinery. And of course, his literacy skills have come into their own when travelling independently, with him able to use the technology on the station and on his phone to use public transport safely. So that just briefly gives you a bit of a background about our journey using the types of strategies that Rob talked about earlier. It will be really good to hear your questions and what's working for you. And so just to finish up, a couple of resources that may be helpful. So some of you may know of the Understanding Charge Syndrome free online course that the Charge Syndrome Australasia group have made. I encourage any of you to do that if you haven't already. Share it with your colleagues or your family and friends and get them to do it as well. You will have access to the world experts on Charge Syndrome through this course. You don't have to do the whole course. You can use it as a resource and tap into it whenever you want. And some other resources in learning sign language and also communication. So we did the Heyman program, It Takes Two to Talk, when Sean was very, very young. I'm pretty sure that's still around and still being used, but it taught us the strategies such as observing, waiting, listening, following his lead, encouraging, turn-taking, face-to-face interaction, pausing, using intonation and active waiting. Lots of those skills are good for parents like us to have because of the processing the challenges that our children have, and also the challenges they have to actually just communicate clearly. It really highlighted for us that Sean needs to be given time to process information so that he can respond. The other resources on there is a Instagram site called Raising Frank and Billy. A mum in Queensland who's also a teacher of the deaf and a fluent signer is teaching her second child, Billy, sign language because Billy was born deaf, coincidentally. And some of the strategies that she's using were some of the strategies I was taught 20 years ago. So if you're a parent looking to do this from the get-go, that is a really good website, Instagram post to follow. Auslan Storybooks is an online website where there are storybooks that are signed, and visually there's a video of that. There's an Auslan Tutor and New Zealand Dictionary and an Auslan Dictionary. All of those are available on the App Store. So really useful tools to have in your kit if you're learning to learn sign language. Thank you for listening.